Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Proud Bavarian and this is the very first of many news flashes to come for CK3. They just released the first after. You can see it was literally released 1 hour and 20 minutes ago as of this recording. And on this channel, I will go ahead and every time there are significant news about Crusader Kings III, I will, dissect it. I will talk about the old systems that we had in CK2 and the new systems that we are now apparently getting in CK3 and whether I think that is good or bad. Now, with that being said, let's just, jump straight into the action. What is this dev diary about? This dev diary is about everything related to houses and dynasties. Back in CK2, and I don't know, maybe you've seen it, I did a playthrough as the House of Capet in an attempt to create a French Holy Roman Empire, and immediately noticed, of course, that there is the historical house of the von Babenberger, which are related to the House Capet. Was there any relationship to the House Capet at all, despite, because of having the same ancestors? The answer to that, of course, is absolutely not. CK2 did not simulate that in any way whatsoever. If you have played other mods, for example, I believe a Game of Thrones does it, there are ways to implement, a cadet branch system into it. I think the Historical Immersion project also does it, but the base game doesn't support it, and because of that, it is quite wooden to implement it in a mod. Now, CK3 takes this entire topic and lifts it up to another step. At least that is my interpretation of it. So what they do is they want to connect you more to your dynasty, to care more about your relatives instead of just saying, oh, Susan is my second cousin, let's just marry her to some random genius in a matrilineal marriage and that's about that, Instead, what they do is they give you a system where you have an overarching dynasty and underneath that you have the houses. So, for example, the House Capet is a member of the Robertine dynasty, King Robert being, the first elected king of West Francia. In 866 he was born, and I believe that he was elected in like 923, something like that anyway. I think maybe 922. Either way, he founded the dynasty of the Robertine dynasty, and part of that dynasty is, well, not just House Capet, which is of course the most well-known part of that dynasty, because they were the rulers of France until, I want to say 1793. I don't actually know when they got rid of the king there, but during the French Rebellion, of course. Now, the other part of that dynasty is, the second house right here, so the House von Babenberger. What does that mean? What is the gameplay implication, and how do these two houses interact? Well, that is exactly what this goes into. So this dev diary talks, first of all, about how you can create your own house. Your own house will be, essentially like a cadet branch. It will still be a part of the dynasty, but you will now be the leader of a sub-branch of this dynasty. So, for example, you have to meet some requirements, and let me just read that out here. Making your own cadet branch requires quite a bit of prestige that you do not stand to inherit your house. Also, that you do not stand to inherit a house head's titles. That was just very confusing. Of course, if you have the house head being the one that you would be the heir to, then why would you create a new house? It makes no sense. You will be the house head anyway once the old house head dies. And you also need all dynastic ancestors to be dead. For example, your father, your grandfather, and so on cannot live. There cannot be the direct connection anymore to, the ancestor that created the dynasty. If you create your own cadet branch, they come with so much flavor. For example, a different sigil, which hopefully you will be able to edit, different house words, which hopefully, again, you will be able to edit, and with a specific name. For example, we have down here the House Dover Godwin. Godwin, everybody knows them, Godwin is the house that ruled over England until William came along, William the Conqueror, and took it out of their dying hands. So with that being said, the player gets a lot of freedom, and hopefully, and this is one of my big wishes for CK3, hopefully the AI also goes through in creating cadet branches, because, oftentimes what the AI wouldn't do is do anything when it comes to, dynastic moves, to inheriting something on purpose, and so on and so forth in CK2. Now, if they could create their own cadet branches and kind of, be troublemakers within your dynasty, if you were the dynast, so the head of the dynasty, that would be absolutely amazing. I would be a huge fan of that. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I would absolutely love it. Now, the interesting part about that is, if you found your own cadet branch, the way it works is that your cadet branch will have, certain specific kind of, sigils and names and whatsoever, and that will always depend on the circumstances that you founded it on. For example, if a ruler of the Yemena dynasty would create a cadet branch in southern France, they might be called the Toulouse Yemenas and so on. So where their main seat of power is will also be, the name, or rather their namesake. Now, with all that being said, what is the point of it? Why would you create a cadet branch? Why would you branch out of your house and, possibly betray your house, really? I mean, realistically speaking, that's exactly what you would be doing there. Well, that is because you would be the new head of your branch, and being the head of your branch, or rather the head of your house, gives you certain powers. For example, you can legitimize bastards, call house members to war, and demand that they adhere to their faith. But, and this is exciting, if they refuse to convert back to whatever faith you as the house head, hold dear, they will be creating a new cadet branch. So you can push away people from your house so far that they don't want to adhere to anything you say anymore, and instead they will go on and be entirely independent of your house branch, maybe a rival branch. I hope that there is some sort of rivalry mechanic in there. That would be very exciting. So far that has been reserved to the merchant republics in CK2 and only to one event chain, which is literally just Romeo and Juliet. But it would be nice if we had something like a house vendetta, a house infight that can, for example, be sorted out by the dynast, the leader of the dynasty. And speaking of the dynast, let's talk about it. So he is like a house head, except more powerful. He has the powers that the house head has, except for the entire dynasty, and he can use it against, everybody in that dynasty, regardless of their house, but they will be able to do more things. For example, what they can do is they can disinherit people, they can restore inheritances, they can denounce or forgive members of the dynasty, which will affect opinions in a major way, or they can create personal claims on titles held by dynasty members and make dynasty members and wars they have against each other. So there is much more interaction now when it comes to what your dynasty can do and what your house can do, which, before that, if you remember, you had the family tree and you can go up there and then click find the leader of this house, and then you find the leader of this house. And what does it mean? It means quite literally nothing. So what they did here is made it so that every single member of your dynasty and of your house is more important than they ever were in Crusader Kings II. There was no proper relationship between members of a house or members of a proper dynasty, like the von Babenberg and the Capets, because they, technically, mechanically speaking, the AI had no idea that we shared this tremendous ancestor, and they really didn't care about it. So, all of this will change in CK3. And I think practically everyone that has played CK2 or, has watched videos on it can be excited for this, because the potential for roleplay is insane. The way you can duck, beneath a powerful dynast who could possibly crush you, or the way that you can crush others, it gives you so much it gives me so much excitement, rather, for roleplay. And think about it. This is literally the dream of Tywin Lannister. Think about it. Tywin Lannister, who always said the house and the dynasty is above everyone else, he would rejoice with the idea that the dynast can go on and punish everyone underneath him. Now, here comes the part of this dev diary that I think may be a bit more controversial than the tremendous changes that probably everybody can agree to, and that is Renown and Splendor. Renown and Splendor are two new forms. Splendor is not exactly new, so Splendor, it starts down here, don't worry about it. It first of all makes everything look nicer. So people will, look at your shield and they will say, wow, that looks really nice because you have a bit of a coat of arms frame going on there. It will also make it so that you get bonuses on your opinion from other people, because they're like, hey, you are from a very respectable house. I, of course, enjoy your company. It can also happen that, for example, your long rulership bonus, rather, can increase and make it easier to rule the later you are into the game, which, let's be real, obviously happens most of the time anyway, but let's see how they balance it out. Splendor, to me, is literally just the logical conclusion to what Dynasty Prestige was in CK2. Dynasty Prestige had no value other than you looked at it in the top right corner and said, wow, I am so powerful. Now, Renown is something that coincides with Splendor but is not the same thing. Splendor is accumulated by the dynasty by, being good rulers, by being here and there, by spreading your dynasty all over Europe. But Renown is spendable. So Renown is created in the same way as Splendor, except it's not a counter for how successful you are, but it is, currency that you can spend on your dynasty. And I know that this will be very, very dramatic. I think people will be very, see this in a very controversial light, that you have a currency that is not, for example, money, and you can spend it on things, and people will call it mana. And before we jump into the topic of what is Renown in detail and what does it do, I just want to bring one thing up. I want everyone watching this video, everyone that will watch my opinion on the topic of Renown, to be well aware that prestige and piety and society points and whatever else there is, it is all mana. I'm not saying that it is equal to, for example, Europa Universalis 4's mana, where you have very little influence over how much you earn and whatnot, but it is mana. It is not an actual value. Money, for example, is always an actual value. I can go out right now, go into my local supermarket and say, here, you have 2 money. They will definitely look weirdly at me because I use the term money, but they, you know, like, you have 2 money, but they will know what I'm talking about. If I go to them and say, my prestige commands you to give me this item for free, they will absolutely call the police and probably try to get me into a hospital. But the point of this story is that not all mana is bad. If you have influence over the mana, if what you do in the game matters for that mana to be accumulated, for example, prestige via raiding and so on and so forth, and piety via just being a pious man or pious woman, if you have influence over mana, mana is a valuable tool to be used in order to have soft power and whatnot simulated, which usually doesn't, you know, have any quantification. Prestige, obviously, if somebody that I know, you know, has a good name, who is very reputable, comes to me, I will respect him more. That is exactly what prestige tries to simulate. But in real life, I would never say, oh, this man has 100 reputation, this other man has 2,000. Nobody would do it, right? But for a game, and this will end this tangent into mana, for a game, you need mana if you want to simulate soft power. Which is why I personally don't feel negatively about Renown. So what is Renown? It accumulates like Splendor, except you can spend it and you are encouraged to spend it. It is accumulated by doing heroic tasks, you know, by rising up in the ranks, but also by spreading your dynasty and not just immediately taking everything over that they just inherited, which, you know, is the usual CK2 playstyle, let's be honest here. Instead, what you are encouraged to do is you are encouraged to take your dynasty, go out there and set them on thrones, marry them to important people and make it so that those important people, you know, give you some splendor and give you some renown at the same time. It's the same thing at the end of the day, except one you can spend, the other one is just, you know, additional kind of prestige there. Now, what it does, if you have renown, it gives you the opportunity to spend it. Spending renown can be done with the dynastic legacies. The dynastic legacies are, when you really look at the idea and the game concept of it, are nothing but the bloodlines in Crusader Kings II that were added in Holy Fury. Think about it. The bloodlines in Crusader Kings Holy Fury had nothing to do with the idea of anything genetic. There were some genetic ones, but most of them were just, hey, you have more plot power. Hey, people know you, you know, more. They like you more. You have more sex appeal. That comes because the people that look at you say, wow, he's the son of, you know, one proud Bavarian the Great, and one proud Bavarian the Great was known for conquering all the world, and because of it, had a bloodline that made me like his heir more, because his heir, you know, looks kind of like he maybe has the same potential, right? It is that. This is not something, and I will get to the meat of this in a second, this is not something that is necessarily, you know, genetic. There are some genetics in these legacies, but they are minor. And they detail that here as well. There's a myriad of legacies to choose from, all divided into tracks with an appropriately thematic name, such as kin, guile, honestly I don't know, blood. These aim to represent notions the world had or has about certain dynasties. For example, the Seljuks are warriors, the Abbasids are lawmakers, the Habsburgs are diplomats. And here is, by the way, one of the biggest issues that I have with this development diary. I pleaded with art, I couldn't get a Habsburg chin trait though. This is a core issue with Crusader Kings III and maybe a reason not to buy the game. Not having the Habsburg chin in is a disaster for every lover of Crusader Kings II. But memes aside, look, what I want to talk about is you have some possibilities, especially here at the end of the blood tree, to go on and implement something that is essentially you getting some better chances for genetics. Now, they clarified in the actual thread here that the chance is not very big. They don't want you to, you know, have only geniuses, have only deformed, ugly people, and so on and so forth. But they want you to, you know, have a certain playstyle where people will come out more classic, fitting to your dynasty. Most of these traits, however, most of these legacies that you can pick up are not related to anything, you know, genetics. They are related to people having, or, you know, knowing about your reputation. They are related to, for example, somebody that comes from a very lawful, you could say from a, you know, honor kind of oriented family, that he will go on and be a better vassal because he is prone to respect the law and he is prone to respect his liege. So most of these things are just, you know, people looking back in time and saying, hey, my ancestors, they were really glorious, they just sat down and always took their oath seriously and I shall do the same. It's essentially something that people will take seriously because it is such a tremendous depiction of, you know, what they think their ancestors were, what they think their ancestors did and valued. So with that being said, you can spend Renown on that, and you can go down either all of these paths. So for example, just law, it will get increasingly expensive, of course, or you can, you know, split it up, do some law, do some, for example, erudition, some glory, some kin, and so on and so forth. So, Renown is spent primarily to create a custom bloodline, and I love that, because think about it, in Crusader Kings II, we had bloodlines all around. It was fairly easy to, you know, achieve any bloodline, really, be it via the custom bloodlines or just by, for example, winning some wars and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, they were all pre-scripted bloodlines. I, in my Let's Plays, have modded in some, you know, specific bloodlines. I remember with the Go West Young Turk Let's Play, I implemented a bloodline that was of the false Mahdi. That was, you know, something that you can, of course, do. It's something that only you have in your game then. But this one is different. This one is much more flexible. And that is one of the most important parts for me. The AI can actually do this. The AI in CK2 would never ever forge a bloodline. They simply wouldn't do it. They were incapable of doing it. And because of it, the world, you know, it was nice as the player, you could have your different bloodlines and you could aim for several different bloodlines again yet, but you never really, you know, saw any bloodline rise up anywhere else unless it was scripted. In CK3, this will be different. In CK3, we will be looking at dynasties that have been forged throughout the ages of playtime, and not just by us, but by everyone in it. Now, the important part about this is that to actually spend the renown that is accumulated with a splendor, you need to be the dynast. So there is an, you know, kind of incentive to be the strongest part of your dynasty, although having a lot of independent other parts of your dynasty all throughout the world, so that you will be the one to actually pick up the legacies. Because if you are not the one, then the other dynast will do it, whoever they are. You know, they could just go like, oh, I like reading. Let's go with erudition, shall we? While you, for example, were more like, hey, I wanted warfare, because I wanted to be known as a powerful warrior so that other people would fear me more. Now, with that being said, we don't know in detail yet which bonuses are hiding behind any of these legacies, but the way I see it and the way they have described it here, for example, you know, you can get these slight bonuses for, be it genetic traits, or you can go on and, for example, just, you know, live a bit longer just in general. You can also go on, and where was it? Legacies are chosen and unlocked by the dynast, so make sure that you're in control of your dynasty. I can't find it right now. Blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, there you go. So this, for example, the Habsburgs, diplomats, and so on and so forth. I don't think this actually talks about the proper skill of the Habsburgs individually, of every single member of the house. But if a Habsburg shows up at court, he will receive respect, because he is a von Habsburg, obviously, right? Meaning that this is not something except the few genetic traits, which I know people will see very controversially, although they are merely chances. But I understand that, I get that. But they are primarily how people view you and how you view yourself. It does not actually describe who your character is. He doesn't have to be primarily, you know, diplomatic, but he will be viewed as it, and because of it has a bonus in it. If you choose warfare, then your enemies surely will have heard of you and will say, oh no, I'm afraid. How do I react to this? And because of that, you, for example, will act as a better tactician simply because people make more mistakes against you because they, you know, are afraid of you. And you, for example, could also just be a better fighter because people have heard of the ruthless fighters of your dynasty. So all being said here, and it's good, god damn it, it's already 18 minutes in. With all being said here, this development diary really gave us a good kind of view into the dynasties and the houses, and then into the legacies, which, again, I fully understand people will be critical about. Now, I personally appreciate the legacies. I think you could tune down the genetics. It's just for fun at the end of the day. Because I don't think, you know, if you're not guaranteed to go for it, I don't think blood will be overpowered if there is anything to be talked about in terms of balancing and OP in a game like Crusader Kings II, which is as sandbox as it is. But I just want to reiterate, I think the idea of having flexible bloodlines is great because it implements it for the AI as well and makes it so that you are actually seeing living and a breathing world. Renown as such is nothing different from prestige or piety or society influence, so I personally don't see it as a shocking thing, as a, you know, radical thing at all. I think it was the next logical conclusion, together with Splendor, of course. Now, with that being said, the next dev diary will be about a preview of the map. So I'm very excited, because we've already heard that the map has been expanding in certain regions. I believe in East Africa a bit, maybe even a bit more in Tibet. I think that is at least what I've heard. I'm very excited for it because the map is surely going to be absolutely beautiful. I hope that they bombard us with screenshots with it. Now, if you have any more input on this, if you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. Let me know and let's talk about it. Because this game, at the end of the day, is the successor to my personal favorite game of all time. I'm sorry to tell you, look, I've played this game every single day now for such a long time, and I know many others have. And I just hope that this will work out. And I'll be honest with you, so far, I'm seeing this as going to the right direction. Do you too? Let me know in the comments, and before I can end this video, I just want to thank the Richest T, Snywolf, Sai, and Herman for being the barons of the channel, and of course Lexo and Benedict for being the great dukes, the beautiful dukes of this channel as well. They are supporting the channel by being members of the channel. I appreciate it, you know, as much as I can, really. It's an incredible support or show of support, and I don't think I can thank them enough. With that being said, if you also want to support the channel, then check out the membership button or check out the Paradox affiliate link, which lets you buy Paradox games for no additional charges, but I do get a share of it. With that being said, I will see you next week, hopefully, for an amazing second Death Diary of CK3. Until then, later, alligator.